Join us at CE on the Beach, June 26th to 28th, 2025, at the stunning Westin Grand Cayman Resort and Spa. This is the ultimate destination event for dentists, teams, coaches, and speakers. Save your spot now and get $150 off with promo code KHENRY. Visit ceonthebeach.com to register today.
Hey, my friends. Welcome into another edition of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. My name is Kevin Henry. Honored to be the host of this podcast, as always, talking to you amazing dental assistants. And thrilled today to have on a friend of mine who is also a member of the Speaking Consulting Network along with me. That is Michelle Lasky. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, everyone. Good. How are you, Kevin?
I am great. I'm so glad that you're taking some time to talk to these dental assistants. And we're going to talk about front and back communication, which we know is such a hot topic. Oh my gosh. I'm excited to dive into that today, but I want our audience to know a little bit more about you before we do that.
I am the owner and founder of Consistent Dental Solutions. I started out as an assistant and worked my way all the way through. So I have experience in dentistry over 20 years now. So it's been fun.
Okay, so what are your best or maybe worst memories of being an assistant? Let me ask you that question. We'll start things off there.
One of the worst moments is I chose the top end of being a dental assistant instead of the bottom end, and I had a patient do a bowel movement in the chair, and I had to clean that up, and that was the worst experience ever in my life. And I was like, I didn't become a nurse for a reason.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that will make you be a consultant very quickly. And I'm sure there are some dental assistants out there that feel your pain. No doubt about that.
It was a one-time happener if it happened more than that, but I absolutely loved dental assisting besides that one time.
Besides that. So, all right. Well, hey, let's fast forward now to your days as a consultant. And you and I just finished a podcast for the Speaking Consulting Network on front-back communication. And I love some of the things you said, particularly about the handoff. And I wanted to start with you on that because we know the assistant plays such a key role in that handoff, and it sets the base for some of that front-back communication. What's a big mistake we make with the handoff, and how do we fix that mistake?
I like to say we assume the handoff happened, right? We walk the patient up front, we hand over that little slip, we say what our little spiel is, and we go on with the patient. And we assume that the treatment is scheduled, the patient's coming back, and it's happening. And what I've found is that we're not fully communicating totally what the patient needs. And so one of the things that I recommend doing is doing a double check. So don't think your job is done by the time you're just dropping that patient off at the front. Double check, see if that patient's scheduled back, and then check with the person who you dismissed the patient with and inquire, hey, did Mrs. Jones get scheduled for that tooth we talked about? She didn't, what were her barriers with moving forward? Did she have questions on the treatment? Was it just on cost? I have found asking these questions, you're going to make sure that your treatment that's being recommended is scheduled, but you're also going to find where you're missing points when you're communicating with the patient. When we start out as an assistant, you learn how to educate someone, and then sometimes you find that it doesn't fit that patient, and you find different ways to explain things to them. So making sure that the education comes across.
When's the perfect time, I guess I should say, to follow up? Is it the next day? When do you recommend?
So I like to say within a week. So I understand dental practices right now are extremely busy. Everybody's wanting to use their end of year benefits. So what I could be asking, you're like, how do I even find time to go do that, Michelle? I know I've experienced that. And you have the availability to go back in your schedule and say, okay, no, we recommended on this one. I recommended on this one. So ideally by end of day and within a week is okay. Is that a good parameter to put around it, Kevin? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make sure, because I think our audience, that was the first thought they had. You mentioned it is, how do I have time for this? That's my bio break moment or whatever it might be, So it's good to know if there is that time window later on when they can do that. And I want to talk to you a little bit about where does that fit in with the morning meetings? Is that a time maybe to to follow up to get better at your communication during those morning meetings? Because I think so often there are some practices that the assistants walk in and they're just ready to be done with that meeting and start the day instead of focusing on what's being said.
That is the best time, honestly, because the front's there, everybody's there to go over if somebody else touched that patient, they'll have that information. You have that whole team there. When you are doing a morning huddle, follow up on the day prior. Hey, we recommended treatment on Mrs. Jones, so and so. Did they get scheduled? And if they didn't, let's tap into why. Majority of the time, we assume that it's financial. And a lot of the times it's because the patient doesn't have a true understanding of their treatment needs. And that falls on us. We're the educators. They're trusting us to educate them on their health. So I always like to what I call take temperature on how you're educating your patients. If they're scheduling and they have a full understanding of their treatment when they're coming in, then you're doing a great job. And if you have patients who aren't scheduling, we need to check in with that and see, is it financial? Are we offering those resources? If not, is it educational? Are we missing the why they really need it?
And one thing I've got to ask you, whenever we're asking about why a patient didn't schedule, it feels like that there's a chance for there to be a little friction, a little misunderstanding that comes in there. Maybe the front gets defensive or the assistant gets defensive. How do we keep that from happening?
I like to start things by saying we are all human, and I am the first person to say I make mistakes. And as soon as you enter a group or a team member like that and having that vulnerability, and instead of pointing the finger, entering the room and saying, what could I have done differently? That changes things so much. So instead of saying, did you get this person scheduled? Did you do this? Did you do that? Enter the room and say, what could I have done differently? Asking your teammates to do that and inviting them to do that with you, you will find more people are going to ask you the same thing.
Do you find whenever you're talking about the front back communication, a cross-trained assistant has a better understanding of both sides of things and really can be that bridge between front and back, or does that another layer of complexity to it?
I love cross training. Everybody should have an idea of what it looks like to sit in someone else's chair. And yes, we have team members who are empaths who really understand that. And then we have other team members who really don't understand what it looks like to sit and drive in those chairs. And I've had the benefit of sitting in a lot of those chairs. And I know in the back, we get tunnel vision and we focus strictly on the patient and the body in front of us. And I've also had the benefit of working in the front where we focus strictly on the computer in front of us. And neither is wrong or bad. It just is. And once we recognize that on a whole level, then we can start to enter things instead of saying, well, if that's how we perform, how can we, make the process fit that? Okay, if you're checking the computer all the time, how do we communicate if you've got bodies in front of you? There's certain processes that need to be in place. Nobody's wrong. It's just the way it is.
And I've got to ask you about one other thing, because it feels like to me, whenever we're talking about that front back communication, the schedule sometimes comes into that as well. And I know that there are times the front is trying to fit a patient in because there's a need. The back's going, oh, that was my one moment. How do we get past a little bit of that rub that goes on?
Communication is everything. If the back is alerting the front that they're behind, the front will do everything that they can to get them on time because they don't want patients sitting and staring at them in the front. So if you just communicate that, they will hold and, support you in that. I love to state this, Kevin. It has been my experience that we've been taught that the schedule is primarily the front desk's responsibility. And that's not true. That schedule is everybody's responsibility. The doctor, the hygienist, the front, the assistants, the sterilization tech. It is everybody's responsibility to make sure that people are educated and coming in, that we have the proper equipment there. It is everybody's responsibility. So it's all hands on deck and making sure that the communication is there. Hey, we're running behind, or even if they're running ahead, hey, we're finishing up 20 minutes early. Let's call the next patient in. I've seen that work out really well.
So in the podcast we did for the Speak Consulting Network, I asked you for your one wish, and you mentioned burnout and that you wish no team member would go through that. And I think there are a lot of assistants out there that as we're getting to the end of the year, they're feeling that burnout. How do we
Yeah.
get past that in 2025? How do we kind of put the snuff on that burnout?
I like the saying of we need to slow down to speed up. So old school race cars, you used to pull them back so that they could race forward. And that is very true. We need to slow down our processes, get them cleaned up so that we don't have this burnout. We have those communication places in point so that when members start to struggle, we create a solution instead of waiting till someone is leaving our team or we're having to hire and then we're really having to struggle. That creates the most havoc in a practice.
As a consultant, do you want for dental assistants to say, I'm feeling burned out, I'm feeling stressed? Do you want that out in the open so it can be dealt with? Is that the best way to get things started?
I don't want it to ever get to burnout point. And if it's I'm coming from burnout, I want to know what specifically is causing that burnout. And then that needs to be addressed. Definitely. And majority of the time it's, well, so and so isn't doing this. It goes back to communication. The doctor's doing this, so and so is doing this. And what I can say to you is the longer you hold it in, the longer it's going to burn.
Mm. Boy, that's a banger of a thought right there.
Yeah.
That really is. So, Michelle, I feel like we could talk for hours on this because front back communication is such a hot topic and a divisive topic as well in so many. But I want our dental assistants to know how they can learn more about you, how they can reach out to you if they've got any questions, or maybe if their practice could use a little communication boost, you always say.
Yeah, definitely find me on Facebook. My personal page is Michelle Lasky. You can find me under Consistent Dental Solutions as well. My website, my phone number is listed there. My email is listed there. If you have questions, please reach out to me. There's no financial in between to send me a message. So if questions, please feel free to reach out. I never want someone to feel burnt out.
Well, appreciate that. And my listeners for Dental Assistant Nation, Michelle's information is going to be in the show notes. Real easy to find, real easy for you to be able to reach out to her if you've got any questions. But I love that we were able to tackle this topic in 2024 and look ahead to 2025 so everybody can make those good resolutions on how to better communicate and how to have a better front to back communication in the practice next year. Michelle, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Absolutely. And hey, thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. Dental assistants, we know burnout's a thing. Communication is a thing. Frustration is a thing. That's why we want to bring on experts like Michelle to help you deal with that. And obviously, we're always going to be here to help you in any way that we can. Kevin at kevinspeaksdental.com. If you need to be connected with Michelle or any of our past guests, happy to reach out and help you in any way I can. Until next time, Kevin Henry, host of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast, signing off. And as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.